Hello, my name is Pat. Today I'm bringing you guys my July wrap up. I actually have a really big reading wrap up for this month. I finished 20 books this month, and I don't know how that happened, but here we are. Alright, let's get started. So the first book that I finished is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I actually had to buy a physical copy of this one because the original copy that I read is from the library, and I rated this a 5 out of 5 stars because it's just it was so good. I loved it so much. We're following here Jessica Davis, who is a single mom. She has been having a hard time juggling her work and taking care of her daughter, and she has not been dating a lot. One day she agrees to try on this up-and-coming dating company called Genetically, which is a DNA-based matchmaking program. She submits her DNA and she gets a 98% match with one of the founders of Genetically, and they decided to try out this dating, and it was so good. It was so good. I love them so much. They have the best kind of banter. Even though it's kind of a hate to love situation, they had really good conversation with each other. They have really good communication. They talked a lot, and I usually hate like the last minute conflicts, but I love how they solved it. I loved, especially on the guy's part, I loved how I just loved it. I don't want to spoil it because I really love that part. I want you guys to experience it if you do read it. But I usually don't enjoy a lot of romance books. I find them usually very formulaic and predictable, but I really love this one. 5 out of 5 stars. So good. I loved it so much. I literally bought my copy the minute I finished it and put in tabs because I loved it so much. I enjoyed it so much. So, The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. Next one that I finished is Living Beyond Borders, Stories About Growing Up Mexican in America by Margarita Longoria. This is actually an anthology. It is a collection of poems, stories, and even some comics from Mexican American authors and their experience growing up here in America. I really enjoy this one. Very heartwarming, very, in a way, educational. It's a must-read for everybody. Gives us more of an understanding of other people's experiences, especially people of color's experiences. So I rate it as a 5 out of 5 stars. This is an arc, and this comes out August 17th. Next one that I finished is Goddess in the Machine by Laura Beth Johnson. This is following a character who grows up from cryosleep thousands of years later, and she is regarded as a goddess by this colony of people who are she's basically the ancestor. So I rated this a 2 stars. I wanted to enjoy this one a lot because I have the arc of the next book that's coming out. I think it's coming out on the 24th, and I was planning on reading that, but yeah, I just didn't like this one. I didn't feel very much for the characters. I felt like the romance was underdeveloped and a little bit forced. The plot was a little bit confusing. The plot was not as intriguing as it would have been, or like it sounded, because you would think you would have a lot of, mystery and complicated scientific stuff and some distorted history. You have to figure out what really happened, etc. Maybe some sinister actions behind what happened to her, why she's the only one who's waking up late, etc., and why she's being taught as a goddess, and what has happened in this colony and in this land. I didn't care for the plot. I didn't care for like the political intrigue in here. I didn't care for the goals of the main, especially the main, male character, the love interest. It's just not, I didn't care enough, and it didn't feel, I don't know, it had so much potential though. It really did have so much potential. I just didn't care for the story very much. So fortunately, that is Goddess in the Machine. Burden Falls by Kat Ellis. This is another arc. This one comes out on August 24th. This is a murder mystery book following a main character, Eva Thorne, who lives in this small town called Burden Falls. It's described as a creepy town with this cursed waterfall, and she has experienced a horrific accident when she was young, but then someone very close to her gets murdered, and Ava is the primary suspect, and she starts to wonder if the legends are true, or what the truth is behind the legends, and what is the connection between those legends and the murder that's happening in her town, and why she is suddenly the main suspect. And I really enjoyed this one. I rated a 4 stars. I really enjoyed even the romance. I really enjoyed the creepy aspects of it, truly, but I did guess quite a bit where the story was going, and I predicted what was gonna happen. I felt like there could have been a little bit more in terms of motives and underlying what gave that motive to these people or that person to do certain things. So again, I really enjoyed this one, but again, it was a little bit predictable with how it ended, etc. So that's Birding Falls. I still really enjoy this one though. Next one that I finished, another arc. This is Both Sides Down by Peyton Thomas. This comes out August 24th as well, and I rated this one a 4.5 stars. We are following here Finch Kelly, who is a high school senior preparing to go to college, and he is part of a debate team. And in order for him to get into his dream college, he has to win this debate with his partner. However, the final debate is about trans rights, and he is trans himself. However, he is not fully out. He's not out with a lot of his friends, but he is out to his partner, and he is actually starting to develop feelings for him as well. And it's so heartwarming. I love the friendships in this story. They're so pure, and so just it gives me the warm fuzzies thinking about the friendships that Finch has, because they're so supportive, they're smart, even though they're all flawed, they always try to do the best and always be kind with each other. So it just really heartwarming, and so I rated this a 4.75 out of 5 stars. So nice. Also, there is like this surprise of Filipino representation here, which I really enjoyed. The love interest here, his best friend, Jonah, is a Filipino. I thought he wasn't, although his last name is Cabrera. I was very surprised with like how well researched in a way the Filipino representation is, because there's parts of them talking about, you know, food, and I love that so much. And also how Jonah calls his parents. He calls them nanay and tatay, which is the Filipino term for mom and dad in a way, or nay and tay, which is the shortened version of that. I love that. And also the incorporation of that culture, because sometimes with a lot of like representation in books, sometimes it's like kind of a throwaway, oh, that he's part Filipino, he is Filipino, and you know, they include some things about being Filipino, but it wasn't not really dealt on. But here we really spend time with Jonah's family and Jonah as a Filipino, and how the Filipino like family culture is very evident in Jonah's family. So I really enjoyed that one. 4.75 out of 5 stars. Heartwarming. So I really just cared so much for the characters here. Next one that I read is After H.E. Brown. I've been wanting to read this for months now, and finally I did, and I rated this a 4.75 out of 5 stars. This is adult contemporary romance. We are following Eve Brown, sister that we're following in the Brown sisters trilogy. She is the youngest, and she is described as someone who always tries to do like a lot of things, but always ends up quitting or not like fully continuing with like the career choice that she has. She's been a wedding planner very recently, and she always does good, but she always ends up not continuing it. So her parents cut her off, and she drives away. She runs away in a way, and finds this small B&B in this small town, and she applies to be the chef. She wasn't accepted, but she was leaving. The owner, Jacob, decides to hire her. Unfortunately, she backs her car into him and he breaks his hand, and so she has to come in and help him with running the B&B, and romance ensues, obviously, and it's so cute. I found myself relating to Eve a lot. She feels like, in a way, a failure, especially compared to her sisters, who are very professional or like very successful in their own ways. And she hasn't found just the thing that is her passion and she wants to do for the rest of her life. And I feel that too. She compares herself a lot to her sisters, and she always feels like a failure, and she always feels like she always has to do her best. But if she does fail, she kind of already expects it, and doesn't really in a way do anything about it. And she's just like, yeah, I expect that to happen. I feel that a lot. I relate that a lot. Sometimes she has high expectations for herself, but she also doesn't expect herself to excel, and when she fails, she accepts it. It's like she knows she was bound to fail anyway. So I definitely relate to her in that. Also, this is very slow burn. Like I was so surprised when we got to like the actual steamy part, because in Chloe Brown and Danny Brown, this steamy parts were pretty early or like in the middle. This one was like the end part of it. I was so surprised when I read it because I flew through this book. I'm so surprised. I was like, oh, we're in 200 plus page. What? Anyway, although it was very, very steamy though. So, Your H.E. Brown. I actually want to read more from Talia Hibbert. I want to read like her backlist books, especially I think Guarding Temptation. I think that was recently got a new cover for that one. Anyway, she has a lot of backlist books, which I didn't realize because I had never heard of her until I heard of Chloe Brown. Definitely want to read her backlist books. Next one is Dark and Shallow Lies by Ginny Meyer saying this is a YA thriller mystery. I rated this a 5 out of 5 stars. This was so good. This also has paranormal elements in it. This comes out, I think this comes out August 24th or August 31st. It's kind of different in different sites, so I'm not 100% sure. So either that, by the end of August, this comes out. I love this so much. Again, I rated it a 5 out of 5 stars. We are following a main character whose best friend dies. She used to live in this small town and she goes back there for the summer to try to figure out what happened to her best friend. And again, there are paranormal aspects to this one, and I love the paranormal aspects in this. It's a small town where it's like a small town of psychics, pretty much. So people have different kinds of abilities, and she's trying to figure out what happened to her best friend and who killed her, because they haven't found her body. So good. The twist at the end shook me so much. There's a lot of trigger warnings in this one though, so I will try to link down below where you can find it, or you can go to like Storygraph. They have their content warning list for all the books there. So yes, I really enjoyed this one. 5 out of 5 stars. Very atmospheric, very dark. I loved how the story went, and I love the different aspects of the story because we are also following her best friend's perspective on that night that she died as well, kind of mixed in with the different chapters, which was so, it melded perfectly with the chapters. So good. Again, I love this one so much. Read it when it comes out. It's so atmospheric, so good. I loved it so much. If you love thrillers, give this a go. I had an idea, usually because, you know, with thriller mystery, you have to think about, you know, probably you had the motives, what probably happened. It still shook me though, because I didn't 100% expect that was where it was gonna go. I thought that was one of my guesses, but I didn't think it was that one. So I was still shook, especially with how it ended too. Oh shit, how it ended. So shook. Yes. Read it. I really enjoyed that one. Next one that I finished is Incendiary by Zareta Cordova. This is a YA fantasy following Renata Convita. She is a Robari, one of the rarest and most feared of the magical Moria. So in this world, we have Morias who have different abilities, and she's a Robari, and she can take memories from other people. She gets rescued from the palace, but she has to go back undercover after the boy that she loves gets captured by the prince. And I wanted to love this so much because the premise sounds so interesting, and the world definitely is very interesting, but I just didn't care for the characters enough. There's a lot of politics going on. I rated this at 3 stars. I still have a lot of things that I liked about it, but I don't think I will be continuing on with the series. I did borrow the second book here. This is Duology. I borrowed the second book from the library. I have it, Illusionary, but I didn't feel enough for the story for me to want to continue, which is unfortunate because I do want to continue, and I wanted to love it, and it had a lot of potential, but I just didn't end up really truly caring for the characters or really the plot. In a way, it had twists in it, but I just didn't. In a way, I kind of guessed it, but it didn't give me that kind of intrigue, like really strong intrigue to try to figure out what is happening and what is really like the secrets behind these certain events and certain people. It was also pretty dark too, which I appreciated, but again, I wanted to love it. It had really good potential and it had really good parts, but most part of the story I was just like, there's nothing happening, or we're not really getting it. Like, this is also pretty long. It's like 430 pages, pretty above average in terms of length. So with the length of this, I didn't feel like there was enough happening. So unfortunately, I didn't love this as much. So next one is The Whisperman by Alex North. I have been wanting to get to this for a while now. This is, I think, my book of the month choice around 2019. I've been wanting to get to my books that I acquired, like the oldest books that I have acquired. It's one of those, and this is an adult mystery thriller following a father and son who moves to this small town, Featherbanks, to have a fresh start in their lives after they lost the mother. And in here, in this town, they had this serial killer who preys on boys, and one of his signature things is that he whispers at their windows before he captures them and kills them. And one day, the son starts hearing whispers at his window, and we are following them as they investigate and try to figure out what happened during this period, and as they try to investigate and try to figure out who this serial killer is, because they already had someone that they caught, so why is this happening again? And this at the beginning was so good. I rated it at 4 stars. I had a lot of fun. It definitely gave me that creepy, scary vibes, which I really enjoyed. And I also liked the father because he's very, very flawed, and he understands that he could be taking care of his son better. The son is so smart, by the way. I loved him. He's like probably my favorite character because he was just like, he's smart, but he's still a kid. you know. I didn't like how it ended because I kind of guessed where it went, and how we got to the end was not as, I don't know. I wanted a little bit more like explosive, dramatic, and really tense ending, and it wasn't really that. It was a little bit tense, definitely, but it wasn't as tense as I thought it was going to be. And I guessed where this was gonna go. So 4 stars. I thought it was gonna be like a 4.5, 4.75, but with the ending, you know, I still really appreciated how we got to the end, and you know, all the tense stuff and the creepy vibes that it gave me. Really good still. So the next 4 books are part of a series. So I read the first 4 books in the Fire Blood Dragon series by Ruby Dixon. If you don't know who Ruby Dixon is, she's very popular for her Ice Planet Barbarian series, which is an alien, a blue alien smut book. This time, this series is about dragons, and it is set in our world, but it is dystopian. It's post-apocalyptic. Here we are following different characters. Similar to Ice Planet Barbarians, the different books follow different characters. The first book is Fire in His Blood, the second book is Fire in His Kiss, and then Fire in His Fury and Fire in His Embrace. So I rated Fire in His Blood 3.75 stars, Fire in His Kiss 4 stars, and then Fire in His Fury and Fire in His Embrace 3.75 stars as well. So it's, again, similar format to the Ice Planet Barbarians. I really enjoy this one because here we're following the different characters in this dystopian world after the dragons have ripped apart the skies and kind of terrorized the entirety of humanity. Now humanity lives in like barricades, and they're trying to survive as the dragons attack and kill them. And there's definitely like that mystery of why are the dragons here, how they got here, and you know, what their purpose is for coming to Earth, all that. And I really enjoyed that part of the story because I do want to try to figure out like why are the dragons here, and it does include nuggets of it with every. The only thing is it varies in different books. It was introduced in the first book that there might be more to it, but it is much more evident in the second book, which I really enjoyed. That's why I rated it 4 stars, because we're really trying to figure out how the dragons got here, on top of, you know, the romance and the smut and all that, which I really enjoyed. And with the third and the fourth book, I thought we were gonna get more, especially with the introduction of a certain villain that kind of gives us a little bit more clues on how probably the dragons came here. But again, didn't give us much of the second book. I thought it was gonna give more as much as the second book, but we still are very much focused on the romance of the story. Again, I really enjoyed it. I think it's really much more of the romance and the smut than the series. But again, I just wanted a little bit more because it's very interesting, and with the introduction of it and the inclusion of that part of the story, the mystery of the dragons coming here, I thought, you know, we were just gonna get a little bit more. And I do want to get to the rest of the books, but I think I need to kind of slow down and get into this book. So there's only 9 books so far, I think, and I'm already halfway through the series, so I want to kind of slow down. Maybe read like 2 or 3 books every month until I get to the end. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I will continue it, but I won't be like binging it as much as I did this month. Next one that I finished is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I rated this a 4.75 out of 5 stars. Emily Henry has been going around, especially in book talk, with her recent release of People Will Meet on Vacation. But this one is her debut, I don't believe. She has other books before this one, but this one was, I think, her most popular one after People Will Meet on Vacation. I think Beach Read really was the one that kind of, I mean, I discovered Emily Henry through Beach Read after Book of the Month. After her being featured in Book of the Month and people talking about Beach Read. There were a few interviews about this one, but I really enjoyed this one. I did went in kind of expecting, or kind of knowing, that people didn't like the main lead, the main female lead. So I kind of went in maybe thinking that maybe I might not like her as much as other people, or as much as I want to. So we're following 2 authors, January and Gus, who are both in a creative rut, and they're staying in this small town in, I think, Florida, and they're neighbors. So they decide to exchange genres to try to get out of their creative ruts. And the whole idea is that they're going to teach each other how to write their books, you know, what they go through, etc. And yeah, romance ensues, obviously. And okay, the reason why I didn't rate this a 5 stars, even though I really liked it and I really enjoyed it, is because of the main male character, which is a little bit surprising. I liked him though, but throughout the book, it was very easy for him to be misunderstood. He does and says things that are easily misunderstood. Although we are following January's perspective, I still feel like January's kind of reactions and the way January feels towards him was merited, because the things he does do make things a little bit more complicated and a little bit easily misunderstood. I didn't hate him though, but he's very closed off. And I get that there's characters like that, and obviously they're not, they're still getting to know each other, they're not telling each other everything, etc. But he kind of led January on a little bit, although he was the one who said don't fall in love with me. In a way, it's kind of like okay, you think I'm falling in love with you, whatever. But then he does things like, kind of, how do you expect a person to not react a certain way when you do and says things, and then you go back and do and say things that are kind of the opposite of it? So anyway, 4.75. I still really enjoyed the romance, but again, the main male character can be a little bit easy to misunderstand, so that's the only thing. 4.75 still. But I read People Who Meet on Vacation after that, and I love this one so much. 5 out of 5 stars. This is Best Friends and Lovers. Okay, we are following Poppy and Alex, who have been best friends since college. They have been going on vacation for a week every year for 10 years, which ended 2 years ago after which they stopped talking. And Poppy decides to contact Alex for one last vacation to try and salvage their friendship after she feels just in a rut. She's down. She's not as happy as she had been at the beginning of her job, which was her dream job as a travel journalist. And oh, I love this one so much. I didn't expect to relate to these characters as much as I did. They are both much like Beach Read. You can definitely tell that the characters are meant for each other. They're pretty much soulmates if you believe in soulmates. But with these two, they started out as really great friends, and in a way they are each other's, like, the best part of their lives. They're each other's best part, and they don't want to ruin the friendship that they have, which is like the main thing about Best Friends or Lovers. Do you want to change your relationship and have like that uncertainty and probably lose the friendship that you have with this person that is very, very, very important to you? Or do you want to stay friends and kind of suffer through the heartbreak of not being with each other? Kind of struggle. And I really love that. That's why I really like Best Friends or Lovers. But usually it's not done very well, because sometimes it's a little bit one-sided. One side is a little bit too aggressive, and one side is a little bit too hurtful because they're pushing the other person away. But for these two, we really get into who they are as people separately from each other, and why they have so much fear with being together, even though they're kind of clearly meant for each other. They don't want to lose each other because they're that precious with each other, so they don't want to lose each other by pursuing something that they're very uncertain of. And they also have different desires and different wants and different kind of things that they want in their lives. They're both different people, but they both love each other so much, and they both fit so well. And there's a lot of, unsaid things between them that in a way can make things kind of complicated and like really frustrating. But with them, it's, for me, I understood very much the things that they don't say and the things that they are afraid to say. And it made me very emotional. I cried a lot by the end of it, and I just related so much with their fear of losing the one person that is the best part of your life because you wanted more, and not feeling like you're enough for that person, and so you don't want to ruin their lives by being in their life even more than you already have. In a way, that's how they feel towards each other. And just thinking about it's making me so emotional. So yes, if you haven't read this one, please go read it, especially if you love Best Friends or Lovers. Again, it's not so heartbreaking because I love their friendship. I love their dynamic. They have really great banter. They just have really good chemistry with each other. They just click, even though they're so different from each other. They kind of bring out the best from each other, and they bring out like the best hidden parts of themselves with each other. I just really love it. So People Who Meet on Vacation, please go read it if you haven't. The next one I finished is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is a translated from Japanese book centering in this cafe in Tokyo that gives the customers an experience of going back in time. There's a lot of rules with this traveling back in time. Like, for instance, you have to sit in a certain spot. You can go back in the past, but you can change the present, and you have to go back before your coffee gets cold. That's why it's called Before the Coffee Gets Cold. You have to drink it too, so for you to come back. If you don't, there are consequences on that. And if the person that you want to meet doesn't go to this cafe, you can't meet that person. So that person has to go to this cafe too. I really love this one, although it's more of an anthology. We're following different people, different chapters that go back in time, but it really worked for me. Usually with anthologies, it doesn't work for me because they usually feel very underdeveloped with the characters specifically. But for this one, I think because of the whole premise, it really worked. It made me very emotional. Like, every chapter made me tear up, if not cry. I definitely want to read the next book, although I feel like I need to kind of recover because it's a very heavy book, very emotional. And yeah, I rated this one. I think I rated this one 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this one still. Next one that I finished is another arc. This was actually sent to me, I think, halfway through the month. This is coming out August 31st, and this is A Wizard Always Watching by Stephanie Perkins. I rated this 3 stars. We are following best friends who are going to this one last trip together before they go to college and separate, and they go into this 3-day hiking. They haven't hiked before. There's a lot of unsaid things between the two of them, and it all starts simmering out. There's a lot of tension between the two of them, and kind of because of that, they get off the trail, and they discover that there's a lot of dangers in this forest. So this is a thriller, YA thriller by Stephanie Perkins. Stephanie Perkins, I think, released her first thriller last year or 2 years ago. It had a mixed review, and she is more popular for her Lola and the French Kiss series, which I read and I liked, but I liked the last book more. Anyway, I enjoyed the first part of the series. I enjoyed following the best friends, because even though they're like really bickering, and they're like there's a lot of unsaid things between the two of them, with, you know, what's happening with them separating, but also how they become friends, and throughout the course of their friendship, it really starts coming out, especially with them close to separating. I really appreciated that. They felt real. They felt like they're really like best friends who want to be with each other. There are a lot of differences between the two of them, a lot of different perspectives in life. They have different experiences, and so they see things differently from each other, obviously. So I really appreciated that. But the thriller aspect of it, although the first parts were really good, it definitely made me like really tense and scared, and a little scared, you know, creeped out. I didn't like how we got to the end. It's a little bit unrealistic, parts of it. I'm gonna go into spoiler for that part so that you can fully understand. But if you don't want to read or hear the spoilers, I will put like a spoilery sign here when you get to that. So again, there are parts that were unrealistic, a lot of parts that were unrealistic, and I didn't really like how it ended. I felt like we could have gotten one more chapter at the end, which I will get to in the spoiler part too. So yeah, 3 stars. So spoiler part, the unrealistic things are, okay, they're hiking, right? And they're arguing, and one of the girls I think Josie falls into this hole and breaks her leg. Literally breaks her ankle, with the bone like protruding out of her skin. And her whole foot is pretty much off. It's only being held by her muscles and skin that are still kind of, you know, being held together. She didn't pass out. Okay, sure. Fine. But she was able to bandage it and all that. And then she has this foot, right? It's broken. Her bone is protruding out of her skin. Her entire hand gets shot off. Okay? So now she has a broken foot with her foot like barely hanging on. And her entire hand is gone. And she still hasn't fainted. She's still conscious. She fainted for like a few seconds, and then she came back into consciousness. And guess what? She was able to bandage her hands again. Okay, sure, whatever. And then she gets shot, right? And then this guy tries to get her out of the hole, because, you know, he wants to do things with her. She was able to get out of this hole, push him down, and shoots him twice. The first time she wasn't able to like shoot him. Second time, she was able to, at the chest. And then she runs away. I mean, she uses the gun as a crutch, but still, she was able to run away and walk for miles. And then this guy that she shot doesn't die. He gets shot on the chest, right? He doesn't die. He gets out of this hole, finds them and the other guy that he is working with. This other guy takes out the bullet from his chest, and he's still conscious. And oh my god, so these girls, so Josie, like with a broken foot and her hand shot off, is still conscious. And she, you know what? She was actually the one they got tied up. And she was actually the one who gets out of like them being tied up, because she had this ring that they had made out of stone, and she was able to cut the ropes binding them with it. With her being in so much pain, her hand shut off, her foot broken. It was so unrealistic. So unrealistic. And guess what? What? At the end, when they finally get rid of the 2 guys, Josie, slashes the tire of their truck. Josie, gets in the driver's seat and drives them out. Before that, it was said that Josie couldn't drive because her dad got into an accident and died. And ever since then, she's been very nervous behind the wheel. Her friend, Nina, is suffering from an asthma attack. I get that. But oh my god, with her broken foot and her hand gone, she was the one driving them out of there. And it's a few hour drive from civilization. It's literally in the middle of nowhere, that hiking trail. So it was very unrealistic. That made me very frustrated. I was like, that is not realistic, at least in my perspective.
with her losing so much blood, with her adrenaline pumping, sure, okay, but then you would think she would have already been physically unable to do any of these things already. What? I don't. Anyway, so there's all the spoilery parts of that one. Let's keep going. We have a few more. Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. This is a historical fiction set in the 1950s, following 17-year-old Lily who goes to this telegraph club with her classmate Kathleen Miller. The Telegraph Club is a popular lesbian club in San Francisco, and she starts to question her identity and her attraction to girls as well. And it's them figuring out it, well, especially on her part, her figuring out attraction to women and the expected things from her parents, expectations that her parents has for her, and especially during this time where people are not very open yet. And yeah, I rated this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed the romance between our two characters because they're very young, and with their kind of future on the line, they're very careful with, you know, their relationship, but they're also precious. They're both very smart, both very kind and caring people, and I just want them to be together. They're so precious, and so I just wanted the best ending for them in spite of what they've been going through, especially with Lily and her parents and her family not accepting her, with her parents and her family, their expectations. And yeah, it's 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's a beautiful story of you know, family and friendship, and also love and acceptance, and I really enjoyed this one. I cared for the characters so much. They're like my babies. I want them to be happy. So yeah, Last Night Telegraph Club. Next one, the last two books that I finished are part of a duology, and this is something that I've been wanting to read for a while now. Price War and Ironheart by Nina Varela. This is a sapphic YA fantasy, kind of sci-fi as well, following two characters. We are following here Ayla, who is a human handmaiden, servant in this palace, and she wants to take revenge for what happened to her family by killing Lady Crier, who is the sovereign's successor. And it's a romance between the two characters set in this fantasy world where humans and autome, robots basically, are kind of in a war between each other and who should rule and all that. I wanted to love this one. I was very close to DNFing the second book actually, and I didn't. I pushed through it because I wanted to finish it and I wanted to read it and I wanted to love it, but I just couldn't. There was enough intrigue in the first book with, you know, the mystery of what really happened in the past, and you know, what's happening politically, the political maneuverings of the people around them and what could possibly happen with them. There's a lot of intrigue when it comes to like the past and what really happened in the past, and the current political intrigue and the connection between the past and what's happening now, with some sides fighting for coexistence with humans and autome, and another where they want the autome to rule and humans to be almost completely eradicated in a way, or completely separate from humans. I really wanted to read this book. I really wanted to finish this book. I really wanted to love this book. Politically, plot-wise, I didn't care for. I wanted to. Again, we were given enough. There was a little bit of intrigue in the first book, and I was definitely interested to explore that more in the second book. But really, we got a little bit more of it, but not enough, and not intriguing enough for me to love it. Character-wise, I enjoyed it. I enjoy the characters very much, and I like them. But again, it didn't feel okay. So the villains, there wasn't enough kind of tension between the characters and what they want and what they're fighting for. I didn't feel as invested in what they want to do and what they want to happen, because part of it is I didn't think the villains were effective villains. I didn't feel threatened by the villains. It wasn't very clear to me what their like full plan or full motives are. And even then, I had like a basic idea of, you know, what each side wanted and what it means for the other side, what they want. But again, I just didn't feel threatened enough. I didn't feel like there was enough to be scared of. It feels kind of detached from, as we're following these two girls' perspective and what's happening, it kind of feels detached from what was happening. So I didn't feel like fighting for the same thing that they want, not as strongly. Obviously I want, you know, them to succeed, but I didn't feel like there was enough of a stake in what was happening for me, and enough for me to want to
to just protect them or like want to fight for what they fight for. Anyway, so 3 stars for both of these. I liked it enough. I did like the characters. I was intrigued with the plot and the mysteries in the story, but again, it didn't give me enough. Unfortunately, that was a disappointment for me. So yes, those are all the books that I read for the month of August. For the month of July. For the month of August, I do have quite a few books that I want to get to, but I also have a lot of plans, with August being my birthday month. So I have a lot of things planned in terms of what I want to film and what I want to share, etc. So yeah, this is like my best reading month so far, and I probably won't be able to read as much for the rest of the year. But again, I'm so glad I was read 20 books this month, because I haven't read that much in so long. So I'm just really happy with the amount of books that I read this month. And I had like really great gems. I had a few 5 stars and quite a few disappointments this year. So it's really a mixed bag for me. So yeah, I've been talking for an hour now. This is not good. But yes, I will see you guys on my next video. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Bye.